Welcome to the Great Awakening Show. I am Joanne-Divine Life Yogini, and on this week's show, we have Miriam Lancewood. Miriam is an internationally best-selling author and modern nomad. Her book, Women in the Wilderness, sold 60,000 copies internationally and has been published in 6 languages. She has spoken on panels worldwide and been featured on TV, including Ben Fogle's New Lives in the Wild. Her new book, Wilder Journeys, is coming out soon with Watkins Publishing.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Lovely, lovely to see you. Honestly, you are such a wonderful woman. What an inspiration to all the women out there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Thank you for being on the Great Awakening Show today. So, what an incredible life you have lived, really. It's just so beautiful. But the first question, I've got lots of questions to ask all about your book and about your nomadic lifestyle. But first of all, I believe that the whole world is going through a great awakening at this time. And it's really been, prophesized by the indigenous peoples around the world that this time is a real great awakening. Do you feel that? Well, how do you see this great awakening? You know, how is it for you? How do you see it for you and for the rest of us?
Yes, I think you're right. And I've given it a little bit of thought of what is awakening. Well, awakening is not asleep, right?
Yes.
And I think that a lot of it is getting real as opposed to being asleep, whether that is a nightmare or a dream. So whether that is trying to live in utopia or being absolutely paralyzed with fear. So awakening is get real. And that's exactly what happened to us living for 7 years in the wilderness of New Zealand. That we began with living, and we're going to live in the wilderness. And we're going to live like Robin Hood and they're going to be fantastic. No, it wasn't. So we had to give up all of the ideals and ideas. And we had to wake up to reality, which is quite different. So I had to give up these ideal circumstances of what I would be and actually living in the here and now.
Yes.
And that's sometimes quite sort of sobering. It's not a utopia anymore.
No, it's quite, it's not all like butterflies and, going through the meadows and, it's harsh reality in their moments, isn't it? It's just, wow. The wilderness can be beautiful, but then can be harsh the next, can't it?
Yes, that's right. So it completely depends on the weather. If the weather is really good, of course, it's fantastic and lovely. But if it changes and you are in a storm, do we still like nature then?
No.
When people say, I love nature, I'm thinking, really? Of course, I love nature. I love to be in there also because I love the thunderstorms, the harshness, the severe cold, the wetness, all of it, because I feel alive.
Yeah. Wow. And what about, how can we, because I feel this great awakening time is about us. We've forgotten about the natural world. We live in these little boxes. We live in these towns. We live in these concrete jungles. Our ancestors, we lived at one with the natural world, with Mother Earth. And I feel that this great awakening is bringing us back. We might have go on in our future with high technology, but we've got to mix it with the natural world and come back to the mother, and come back to Mother Nature, who can cure us and give us all this beauty. So how can we get out of our comfort zones and connect to our wild animal soul within? And why is that so important for us to do?
I think we have become very unpractical. So if you go and walk in the forest and try to connect with nature, well, you may or may not succeed. A lot of us would feel like just an observer, like it's like three-dimensional television, so to say. But everything changes if you become very, very practical. And with me, that happens when I started hunting. And I felt part of nature. I was like the predator. I was a lion.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I'm completely have a role to fulfill. And also now at the moment, we are living in Bulgaria in a little off-grid cottage. And there's a lot of practical things to do. Today, for example, we've been emptying our toilets. So I've dug a hole and I put some planks on it. And that is our toilet. So after 6 months or 8 months, we have to dig that out. It's a compost toilet, right? And so that just looks like soil. But I had to put that in buckets and walk up and down to
Wonderful.
make it into a garden. So that's so practical.
Yeah.
And I think that getting our hands dirty, that is what reconnects us with this earth. It's a very practical thing.
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. And, you know, being at one with that earth, you know, it's like I walk around today. It was such a beautiful day in England, and I was walking around barefoot through all the beautiful new flowers that were coming out just around the park. I don't care what people think of me. Do you know what I mean? I'm always hugging the trees, but that grounding, that is so important for us, isn't it? To touch Mother Earth, to be part of it, to feel that. You know, I meditate there as well. It's so beautiful to feel, you know, that natural communion with, because we are a part of the natural world, are we not?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, but most people don't have time to do what you've done today, right? Too busy.
Yeah.
That always reminds me of Lao Tzu, who said, of all things, it is busyness that I fear the most. And that's right. It's so easy to fill up your life. Be so busy and, oops, that was the end of my life.
Exactly.
Where did he go?
Exactly. Or people are they're so busy that they've come out of the divine moment. I call it the divine moment because it's only now. There is no past or future, you know, but everyone's living, I should have done that and I should have done this. Or they're going, but I've got to do that and I've got to do this. They're not being now. And that's where being in nature brings us into that beautiful moment where all possibilities lie.
Yeah, that's right. But it's very hard because we are so conditioned to the future. If you go to school, it's all about progressing. You will learn. Next year, you are smarter than you are now. So everything is about learning and becoming better. And it's such a trap, even becoming more spiritual or becoming enlightened. It's the same way of thinking.
Yes.
And if you're so caught up in that, then it's very hard to be in the here and now because it's much better to become better, right?
Yeah. But it's about being, you know, the art of being in the moment now, just surrendering, just being, just what you are doing. You're on the grass, you're digging that hole, you are doing that in the moment. So you're not thinking of other things. You're being mindful of the now in that moment. You know, I think that's what nature does for us. You know, when you really get there, you know, the practicality of it brings you into that mindfulness, into that moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. But in order to have such a life, I had to completely untangle myself from society. And then a lot of people will say, well, if you can't walk away from society, what's your contribution to society? And you have to go through those questions and realize, well, those contributions, is that an actual contribution or is that just being part of the mega machine?
And, what does success, so, this is our own journey. One person's success is completely different from another person's success, living in that way. I think you are a successful, autonomous, empowered, divine feminine woman for what you've done, for going into the wilderness and for writing your book, Woman in the Wilderness. What a beautiful, and so many women can read that and relate to that. And that's empowering, to come out of the rat race, to come out of that. I call it, it's not the truth. It's a falseness, if you will. It's an ego personality, falseness, if you will, rather than the true self. Don't you feel?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Because for 7 years we lived in the wilderness, and we never told people that we were living there. If we saw another one, we always sort of half lying and saying we're in between jobs and we're only here for a couple of weeks. And because when we're there, I didn't feel it was much appreciated. But after 7 years and a book came out, Woman in the Wilderness, and later Wild at Heart, then there was so much appreciation. So isn't that strange?
Yes. You had to live the journey first to be appreciated for that journey, in that way, because it was real then. Yeah. Wow. But your book was so well taken, I mean, it was a bestseller, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed, and translated into 5 languages. I must say, marketing is a very big part of writing a book. So if you do write a book, you have to make sure people know about it.
Yeah.
And that was done very well by my publisher. And so in total, we had almost like 10 television crews filming us.
Wow.
So, of course, that helps.
Yes, yeah. Definitely. Wow. And you, with your partner, your husband, was on the Ben Fogel show, because I watched that, and it was just so fascinating to see that, because, he did it. And then 4 years later, he came back to see you again. But you really were living in the elements. You didn't even have in the first part of your journey, you just lived in tents, and you were nomads, just going to all these different places around New Zealand and around the world. That's incredible,
Yeah, that's right. So I met my husband, Peter, in 2006, when I was traveling around in India. I was traveling 5 months by myself, and then I met Peter. And he had given up his job as a university professor in New Zealand. And he had sold everything and went to live in India with just a small backpack, not even a big one. Mm-hmm. And just that story alone, I was thinking, wow, I've never met such a person with such courage to give up everything, right? And give up his whole career and live with nothing. And that was such an inspiration. And he is always not like, live with insecurity. You're going to live with less. Take that dangerous path. And of course, dangerous path is very dangerous. And he nearly died, that 18 years that we are together, he nearly died probably 3 times. So it's never boring with him. But we have been living nomadically since that day, 2006, up till 2 years ago when we came to live here in Bulgaria. And now we're living, nearly 2 years now. And we have plans to start traveling again, because 2 years is rather long for us.
To stay in one place, you're getting the itch, you're getting the bug. We've got to go explore. You're such an adventurer. That's just so beautiful. And I think that's why people can see that, especially in women. I mean, I've traveled many, many places, and it's just the adventure. It's the excitement, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And I also think, I ask myself the question, who am I? And I come to the conclusion that what I am completely depends on the country I am in, and the culture I'm in, the place I am in, and the language that I speak. So I'm a different person when I speak Dutch, the country I was born in, which is very strange. So if I go traveling, I'll become a different person. So I can reinvent myself.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to remain flexible.
That is so beautiful, because we're
Yeah.
not here to find ourselves. We're here to create ourselves anew. And we create ourselves in different circumstances as we go through different periods of our life, don't we?
Yeah, well, what are you going to find when you find yourself? One version of yourself, right? The
Yeah.
moment you find yourself, you already become different.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a never-ending, evolving journey, isn't it? You know, it's just beautiful.
I believe, as long as you keep on moving and go to different places, learn different language, maybe have a different partner, go to a different country, and then you see, I'm a different person.
Wow.
That is what I discovered when I was building a hut. So in December, I built a tiny house. I have no experience with building, but I thought surely I can figure this out. And I noticed that I had to become a different person in order to build that hut. So a different person in the sense of suddenly my focus, I had to be really focused. And all sort of side effects come with that. For example, I became slightly more impatient. And after a whole day working, I was quite tired. I come back into the house and I say to Peter, oh, where's dinner? I would never say that normally, and I became like a slightly different personality. And then when the hut was finished, I revert back to another person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good to do different things and to remain flexible, I believe.
And to push yourself out of that place, because we don't evolve if we stay in one place, and contrast, challenges, adventure, they make us, move, they change us, they evolve us, which is the whole journey of life, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. We do read a lot of Friedrich Nietzsche, and he says it's courage that made us where we are now. Because if you think about it, our ancestors, they had to kill some sort of mammoth or,
Yeah.
whatever they had to go hunting to get food. And for that, you need a lot of courage. But now it's quite reversed. You are taught in school, be careful, don't take any risk. Why take the risk?
Yeah.
Certainly don't go anywhere that might kill you.
Yeah.
So courage is not encouraged.
No, which is really, really sad. And that's why I don't like schools. It takes away the children's freedom of expression. It takes away their abilities and things like that. And also, I just wanted to ask you, the food, because I know that you was a vegetarian before you went. Your mother brought you up as a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. But living in the wild, how was that when you killed your first animal? I mean, I know, it's for food. It's different. Yeah. Please tell us.
Yes, that's right. So I grew up as a vegetarian, and I believed like this is the right thing to do. I want to be a good girl, right? Why be bad? So just like my other two sisters, we were three little angels. I don't think we did anything wrong. So I never any conflict or nothing. So then I met Peter and we traveled overland to New Zealand. And in 2010, we had this idea to live in the wilderness. And then I thought I would really love to go into the wild and provide our own food. So we live off hunting and gathering, just like our ancestors.
Wow.
And then I decided maybe I should learn how to hunt with a bow and arrow, just like my hero, Robin Hood. And that's when I had to eat, of course, the meat that I killed myself. And that was the first time, and I've written about this also in the latest publication, Wilder Journeys, in my chapter, how I killed a goat. And this, of course, is an innocent creature that I murdered. Right?
Yeah.
This is the reality. This is about awakening. Get real.
Yes.
So I have murdered an innocent creature. So I could not remain in my moral higher ground. I fell down completely. So I felt very evil for, murdering creatures. And then I had to see like, okay, what is this? Why do I think this way? Why do I feel guilty? And because of the conversations with Peter, we talk about what is guilt? Where does it come from? What institution or religion has invented guilt? And what a magnificent tool guilt is, right? You hear about stories of criminals who've done something terrible and they can't live with the guilt and they turn themselves in, right? So obviously guilt is something you can't live with. It's horrible emotion. And we want to get rid of this. But hey, what you feel guilty about is completely culturally determined. Like years ago, you feel guilty for having a person with a dark skin as a lover. Oh, we feel very guilty about that. Or things that is just ridiculous now. And the same for hunting. So I feel so guilty about that. So that makes us think and question what is guilt and what an amazing power tool that actually is. But to come back to your question, it was quite horrible to see a creature, then take my bow and arrow and then shoot him, and then he doesn't die straight away. It's a lot of suffering involved. Then I have to run to the goat and cut the throat, and then skin it. And then, this is the interesting bit, when you gut it, the intestines are still working. So when I looked at the intestines, even if it was already dead, intestines are still working, and you see those veins, and it's pushing the food through. And I'm realizing, wow, my intestines look exactly the same. I am an animal. So that was a great moment of awakening, that I am an animal, just like the goat. And also when hunting with a bow and arrow, especially walking barefoot, I see a deer, and I wonder, what does the deer see when it sees me? It would just see an ape, right? An ape with funny, colorful skin, loose skin. And then I think, of course we are animals. And that is what I keep saying, that it get real. Of course we are animals. And so a lot of those belief systems of we are spiritual, religious creatures, I had to let go of that. And the more I realized we are animals, the more those animalistic instincts came back. And with that, and this is the interesting process, with that also came some kind of spirituality, but different spirituality, not based on ideology, not based on ideas, because I let go of all that. So that took years to realize that, right? That I am an animal. And those instincts, for instance, were, for example, I come to a place and I feel like, wow, this feels like a holy place. This feels very, very high energy. Maybe something has happened here, or I don't know, but not all places feel the same, right? And also a connection with plants. And I look at a plant. This is after years in living in the mountains. I look at a plant and I feel, hey, this could be maybe good for my skin if I use the leaf or something like that. And later on, I would check that. And indeed, because I'm very careful, I'm not going to test it on myself.
Yeah.
And later on, I checked, and indeed, that's right. So there are those instincts that become another version of spirituality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're
which
becoming,
I find very surprising.
Yeah.
This is a surprise.
Yeah. And you're becoming one with that with the natural world. Your instincts, it's like that primal instinct, you know, that our ancestors had, you know, is always inside our DNA, isn't it? It's like, you know, and it comes through, and you're just having that communion with that plant, and it's like a telepathic, it's like telling you it's okay, you know, and it's beautiful to have that communion, because I believe nature is our church. Nature is spiritual. Yeah, we've just come away from it.
That's right.
You don't have to reach God to go to a church or go through a priest. God is in everything in nature. It's one, you know, it's within us. It's in nature. especially in nature. And that's what, that's what it is. Nature is spirituality. It's beautiful. That's
Yes,
that's what you're saying, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
You found that spiritual, it's in a different way, in a primal way, which is beautiful.
Yes, indeed. I often call it the magic, and I always think
Yes.
if you can't see the magic when you walk around in a forest, you've lost something very important.
Exactly.
Very sad.
And the forest heals us. It's actually been proven, because I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher, and the energy, the prana, the chi, whatever you want to call it, the life force energy of them trees, that actually heals us. It lifts our energy. It raises our vibration, which is so beautiful. That's why it's so good to walk barefoot in the forest, to touch and to feel the energy and the healing energy of Mother Earth, and the trees. Energy. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of our meta questions before living in the wilderness was, what would happen with body and mind when living far away from civilization? So we see ourselves as a sort of a research, a guinea pig. And that was made of quite interesting process. And what happens was, first, all what we call the spiders in the corners came up. So all these memories of the past, not once, but endlessly coming back and back and back, until you're just sick of it. But we didn't analyze or even talk about it much, because what we noticed that they slowly dissolved. They weren't solved by talking about it. All those sort of traumas, not that I have much, but still, traumas came up and they dissolved by being, as you say, just being in the forest, being in the mountains. And because there was no more input, we felt after some time more clarity, because the mind just go more empty, more light, more clarity.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So that is what happened. And also because we felt so incredibly small compared to the huge Southern Alps in New Zealand. And what I said to a friend 15 years ago is completely irrelevant. So that's another reason why it dissolved, because we felt so small. And you would think, wow, that's a bad thing because we are insignificant. But no, actually, it feels very good to be insignificant.
Humbling, humbling, I think, is a beautiful. Yeah. Wow.
And I think it's very healthy.
Yes.
To become more humble.
Definitely. And letting go of that ego, that personality who wants, who needs, who takes, just to be and just to allow nature and the mother to give to you. I think, to be open to that communication is so beautiful, isn't it? I mean, I remember
in the mountains is quite easy. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No. When I, first started my spiritual journey, I know that, when I started going into nature, that's when it really blossomed. She was calling me. I felt called to go into nature, to be in nature. And, it's almost like she was healing me, like calling back all those parts of me that I'd given away and, in different situations, it's like bringing me into the wholeness. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said about the ego is, so dominant. But actually living in the mountains, you realize that we are completely dependent on sunlight, water from the river, the food that we can find or have brought in. And also that compared to other animals, we were so useless. And so, again, it's impossible to have a big ego out there because we are really so helpless in so many ways compared to other animals.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And your new book, Wilder Journeys. Yeah. What an amazing book by Watkins Publishings. Wilder Journeys, true stories of nature, adventure, and connection.
Yeah, got it right here.
So let's have a look at that book. Wow.
Beautiful book.
Tell us about this book, because I know it's a different collection of all different stories. So tell us a little bit, and maybe, is your story in there?
Yes.
Yes.
My story is in there. Mm-hmm. But it all started with Laurie King.
Yeah.
A nice lady in the UK. And she had this idea, even though she had no experience, to publish a book with different stories from different adventurers, all about nature connection. And she contacted me. And the contact was straight away very friendly. And I helped her because I have been to writers' festivals in New Zealand, Australia, and also Dubai and Hong Kong and Europe. And so I knew quite a few people, you see, I've made friends. And so it was easy for me to contact them and say, would you like to contribute this chapter? So I was quite useful in this way. And then Laurie said, would you like to be the co-editor? So your name will be on the cover too. So of course I didn't say no. But it's really Laurie King's idea. And but all the rest we did together with editing all the stories and deciding what kind of goes in and what goes out. And it's been a fantastic process and cooperation and very good friendship we have now. And so my story is also in there. I described one day in our life in New Zealand in which I go hunting. Yeah.
Beautiful. And then it's all the adventures and connections from all different people from around the world.
Yeah, that's right. And some are very extreme, like Sophie Hilaire is climbing Everest.
Wow.
And others is more everyday, finding healing, what you just said, in nature and the forest after trauma.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's where it's all coming back to, they're having that connection. It's the healing. In Japan, they've got these healing forests, haven't they now? You can go on treks and they call it the healing forest, and you go on and, as part of a healing. They're actually calling that now,
Yeah, forest bathing. Yeah, great. Yeah. They have a great tradition in their religion also with nature. Yeah, and they have preserved their own forest very well. They've cut down other people's forest, but their own forest in Japan is still there. Yeah, it's great.
And this is what we have to do. This is about, your book. And I know that Laurie King as well is very much into the sustainability of, nature and forests and, us being the guardians and looking after nature. And, because we've lost so many species from cutting down, the beautiful big grand forest, the lungs of the world, to the loggers and to the, for more steaks and more oil and, palm oil. We've just lost so much and so many species are going. So this is why it's really important now for this conservation and to awaken people to it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and all of the stories are about, indeed, nature connection in many different ways. So it's very accessible for all the different readers. But we love to have more young readers because it's great for young people to have some inspiration. And that is what Peter and I did too. So before we went into the wilderness, we didn't do any wilderness courses or survival weekends or anything like that. But we did read a lot of books. All books from other people who've been on expeditions and had, weird ways of living. And because their experience teaches us something too. How did they deal with, endless, horrible weather or cold? We read this one story about these people who went to the South Pole for a year. After the ship was gone, they were stuck. They were stuck there in a cabin. And they said, if we could have gone off, we would have. And, so how to deal with that, being isolated in a cabin as well in the South Pole is just bizarre. But yeah, all good learning for us.
And please tell us, because I know on your on the Ben Fogel show that you now teach people. Tell us about what you do with Peter, the teachings and the...
That's right. We are offering philosophy and nature courses. So we talk a lot about philosophy. The little things, for example, what I just mentioned about guilt, that would be typically a topic we would discuss. And also about open relationships, because we believe that we don't own each other, right? And if you know what love is, how can you only love one? Why is that restricted to one person?
Exactly.
And how come we feel guilty about loving someone else? How could that be bad? Those sort of things I like to discuss.
That's beautiful, because in the way we used to live in tribal communities, okay, you have your partner, but sex was so celebrated, and it was, it was so beautiful, and it was so joyous in that celebration that lots of people used to have sex with different partners on special full moons, or, bringing in the harvest and all of that, the fertility rites and things like that. In the tribes, it's natural and normal.
Yeah, indeed. And I think there's all these rules around relationships, including how old your partner should be. Like my husband, Peter, is 30 years older than I am.
Wow.
And of course, it's an absolute ridiculous thing to happen in most people's eyes. How could that even work? So where does all those rules come from about relationships?
Yeah.
And why do we follow them? Because it makes a lot of people very miserable.
It does.
So why do we keep believing in them?
It's all false. And if we, I believe that the restriction of this, like, marriage, not allowed to sleep with them, it's really harmful to our society, because just look at how many men go and see prostitutes. I mean, that wouldn't happen if it was more tribal living, more forgiving, more understanding, more sex is celebrated. It's not a dirty thing that you have to go and do behind your wife's back. Do you know what I mean? There wouldn't be such an industry, would there?
No, indeed. I think that it's very difficult to change the world, change culture and all the rest of it. But it is possible to radically change your relationships and friendships around you. That's the one thing you can do. And if you can talk with other people about, how come we're following these rules that makes us so miserable, should we not question them? Aren't they a little bit out of date?
Exactly. Yeah. That's true.
Another part of awakening. Like, what are we in? You wake up from your dream or your nightmare and realize, oh, this is reality. I am doing this and it makes me totally miserable. Can I change it? Well, maybe you can't, but you can at least try.
And that's how we all evolve. We can only change ourselves and then lead by example for others to see. And it's like, oh, okay, I like that way of being. Yes. And that's how we start to all change, isn't it? And change, because this is what we're in, right? I believe we're in a time of great change, of raising consciousness, of great, and what you're saying about, the spirituality of nature is so sacred. And I feel that's been lost a lot.
I think it's not valued, indeed. So when we come to the question of what can we do to improve, all of this environmental world we're living in, I think the problem is, where do we put our meaning? So at the moment, it is in accumulating more stuff and consuming more things that is meaningful. Nobody teaches us that finding the sacred in the forest is meaningful. No one spends time on that. Well, hardly anyone. Well, luckily, maybe more and more. But I think the problem lies in, where is meaning put? Where is meaning taught in schools? What you are, teachers ask kids, what do you want to become? They never say, when are you going out on your journey into the wilderness to become a woman or to become a man?
Yes.
Nothing like that. There's no rite of passage.
No
one speaks about, when are you going to be showing your courage?
Yeah.
No.
But there used to be.
When are you going to get your job?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what job.
Yeah. But there used to be,
You
know,
yeah,
in the old
indeed.
indigenous,
Wouldn't be
I
the
mean, there
trouble.
are now in indigenous, in the indigenous, they do that. It's a rite of passage to go out and show your courage and become a man or become a woman, you know, in the wilderness, in the forest. It's beautiful. And I think we used to have that in our pagan old, you know, ancient history, but it's been lost. It's been lost. When we came away from nature and came into and built the houses and separated from the tribe, separated, you know, just 1.2, one woman, one man, two children, alone in a house, away from our tribe, away from the elders, away from, you know, all of the elders looking after the children, which we used to have in tribal, you know, community living, matricentral societies, you know. And I think that's really sad. I believe that we're going to become, I totally believe that this great awakening is making so many people look at the way that life has been constructed and how far, and go back to nature. They're opening communities. They're going back to the land. They're buying up the land. They're living more in communities, you know, with the elders, and where everyone can contribute to the upbringing of the children, which is so important, instead of just being alone, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think because society as a whole is going to hit rock bottom, so people think, well, I can't live any longer with this anxiety problem, or, you know, all the, you know, the negative things. They got to find a solution. I mean, I know a lot of people who have physical problems. You know, they're allergic to almost everything, and they think that I got to clean my body, and that's where often their journey starts to a totally different way of life. And what I see happening here in Bulgaria is that a lot more people coming from the West. They come to Bulgaria where there is still forest, very few people, there is space, and affordable housing, and people indeed buying houses in villages and getting that back to life. Yes. And I think that's the movement.
It is, and I can feel it. And I know so many people that are doing that. They're buying the land and they're doing that. They're growing their own food, because the food that we get in the supermarkets is just poison, toxic. It's not even real food. It's sprayed. It's not organic. It's not beautiful. It doesn't have the life force energy in it. Everything that you eat in the wild or you grow yourself, you know that hasn't been touched, and it's got the life force in it. We eat living foods, you know, to get that energy into us. It's so beautiful. But all that stuff in the supermarket's been hanging around for God knows how long, been sprayed to keep it that color. You know, it's so artificial.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And that's what you mean.
Billions of people are eating.
Yeah. 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 And that's what you're saying about cleaning your body, you know, going back to nature, eating natural foods, cleaning the body, cleaning your mind, you know, cleaning your body, your soul, you know, through nature.
Yes, indeed. And what we noticed also is that the body indicates what the body needs. For example, there is very little fruit, of course, in winter in the mountains, right? Nothing at all, in fact. And so we took little vitamin C tablets. And every day we took half a tablet. You know, everything was rationed. And we looked forward to that because it tastes wonderful. And then one day, in summer, we ate a whole heap of blackberries that we found. Then we came back to the tent and we said, it's time for our vitamin C. We ate vitamin C, and yuck, it tastes horrible. Very, very sour. Because our body had enough vitamin C. So when a vitamin C tablet tastes horrible, you know, you got enough. And so that happened a lot with us. Like, I feel, for instance, here, I feel exactly when I want to eat loads of rose hips because of vitamin C. Or sometimes I feel like eating garlic, other times not at all. Ginger, all of these things. So you can listen to your body, and your body will tell you what the body needs.
Beautiful. Of course.
Yeah, it's very simple.
Because we heal. When we have the correct environment, we're our own self-healers. you know, and I believe
Yeah,
that
that's right.
I believe that a lot of disease is because of our toxic food and our toxic thoughts and our toxic living in these concrete jungles. Once you come away from that and you become pure and more natural, so, you know, you will heal.
Yeah, that's right. And over the years, we saw that a lot of these habits and rules about how you're supposed to live together is actually quite nonsensical, especially if you live together 24/7. For example, that you should eat 3 times a day and together at the same time. And you should eat about the same amount and especially the same food. But hey, how about our different bodies? I might need a lot more of one food and none of the other.
Exactly.
And so over the years, Peter and I started off this way, but over the years, we eat when we want.
Yes.
And I discovered that I like to have a huge breakfast of lentils and beans and chapatis in the morning, you know, huge. And then I'm pretty good for the rest of the day.
Me too.
And around mid-afternoon. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And around 2 or 3 o'clock, I have a little yogurt with some fruit, for instance, right now.
Yeah.
But Peter is totally different. He doesn't want a big meal in the morning. So he's got different patterns. And the same with sleeping, another one of those basic things. That I believe that if you are married, you should sleep next to each other at around the same time and in the same bed. And of course, we were in a tent. And so we didn't have much choice. But since 2 years, we are in this little cottage with 2 rooms. And we said, right, you go in that room and I go in that room. Because you sleep so much better. You sleep much better if you are not in the same bed. Well, at least I don't. It's a very personal thing. But friends of ours say, oh, you're sleep divorced. It's very bad. So what? We are 18 years together, 24/7. And, but for most people, sleeping is the only thing they do together. So it's very important, but not for us.
No.
And so more and more of those rules we chucked out, and we just act what is beneficial for us.
Yes.
But this again, you see, get real.
Yes.
Peter and I sleep better when we're not next to each other.
Yes.
Also finish.
And also all that time in a tiny tent, you must have been, gosh, be really nice to have, you know, time on my own to sleep.
Yes, indeed.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But all that judgment, there's so much judgment from other people. Oh, they don't sleep together. And their relationship is bad. And I think, wow.
That's why.
Quick to judge.
Yes. And I think today is redefining, you know,
Yeah.
all different ways of living and being, you know, to your own standard. We are sovereign. We can dictate how we want to live. You know, society should not
that's right. And what works?
Decide society, governments, you know, health professionals, everyone, you know, schools, universities, religions, they should not ever dictate to how another lives, you know, ever. So, sorry, that's just my dog's barking. Yeah. Gypsy. Yeah, no, it definitely they should not, you know, governments and authorities, they should not dictate, you know, we are sovereign, we are autonomous. It's our life, isn't it?
Yeah, the government does not dictate. It has unwritten rules, the rules that we know all so well, right? So a lot of these rules, nothing happens when you break them. They're unwritten rules, like who you should marry, and what you should say, and how you should act, and when you should eat, and how you should sleep.
We are our own rules. We are our own kingdom and our own queendom. You know, how can anyone have rules above us? No, we're made of the image of God and the image of the goddess. We should be able to carry out our life and live it however we wish.
Yeah, that's right. But most of the time, we're not aware of the rules that we are following. You think it's just normal, right?
Yeah.
So first we have to be aware of the rules, and are those rules still serving us, or is it just a limitation? Yeah,
yes.
That's the hard thing, to see which rules am I believing and following.
Yes.
Yeah. And what happens if I break the rules? And then I discovered, with being with Peter, who is 30 years older, nothing happens. And I discovered if you do something long enough, it becomes normal. And everyone will accept it. But you have to persevere.
Yeah.
It's
I love that.
endurance.
Yes. Never give up, never give in, and persevere. And it's so important to keep, to do that, because I believe, breaking the rules. I've broken the rules all my life, but it's very important. We are light and we are dark. We are good and we are bad. But you've got to experience all your darkness as well as your lightness. And it's good to be a bad girl and push the limits. Otherwise, you would never know who you are. You've got to push yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Otherwise you would never know, would you?
No, indeed. And plus that what we think of bad, such as eating meat, can change into good. So I have become bad in my eyes, and I've just changed that. Now bad is good. So that completely changes.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Yes, nature is our church. It really is. Nature is our spiritual place to find ourselves. It's so beautiful. And it's just been absolutely fascinating talking to you. And just tell all our audience, where can they go to find your courses, what you do for your rewilding, your courses in the wilderness? What's your email?
You can find me on my website, miriamlanswood.com. And since a couple of months, I also make loads of shorts, because it has been a very cold, miserable, wet winter and spring. And so I have been amusing myself with making some shorts and asking some questions. And so you find me on YouTube on Miriam Lanswood in the Wild.
On YouTube.
Yeah, on my website, you can find all about the courses.
Wonderful.
And I shall use this opportunity to show Woman
in the Wilderness, your beautiful book.
And my second book.
Wonderful, Wild at Heart. Yeah. Miriam, you are a wonderful woman, and we just celebrate you for having the perseverance to go through your incredible, unique, profound life. So thank you for all of your divine wisdom and truth on the Great Awakening Show.
Thank you so much for having me.